Section 8 of Monday Tales. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Monday Tales by Alphonse Daudet, translated by Marion McIntyre. Section 8, The Clock of Bougival, from Bougival to Munich. It was a clock of the Second Empire, one of those timepieces in Algerian onyx, ornamented with campagna designs, such a clock as may be purchased on the Boulevard des Italiens, its tiny gilt key dangling crosswise at the end of a pink ribbon. A genuine Parisian novelty, the frailest, daintiest, most modern of things, a real opera bouffe clock, chiming with a charming silvery sweetness, but possessing not one least grain of common sense, and full of caprices and crotchets, striking the hours after an impossible fashion of its own, skipping the half-hours, just knowing enough to announce for Monsieur the hour when he must go to the Bourse, and for Madame the propitious, eagerly awaited moment. When the war broke out, this timepiece was rusticating at Bougival, created especially for one of those fragile summer palaces, those butterfly cages with paper frills, migratory establishments that are not meant to outlast a season, but adorned with lace, muslin, and light silken transparencies. After the arrival of the Bavarians, it was one of the first prizes to be carried off, and really it must be acknowledged that these people from over the Rhine had no little skill at packing, for that plaything of a clock, scarcely bigger than a turtle-dove's egg, was able to make that journey from Bougival to Munich in the midst of Krupp guns and carts loaded with grape shot, arriving safe and sound, and on the very next day showed its face in the shop window of Augustus Kahn, dealer in curiosities, Odeon Platz, as fresh, as coquettish as ever, with its two delicate hands black and curved as two eyelashes, and its gilt key still dangling crosswise at the end of a new ribbon. The illustrious Dr. Professor Otto von Schwanthaler. This arrival was an event for Munich. No one there had ever seen a Bougival clock before. Everyone came to look at it, regarding it with as much curiosity as the Japanese shells in the Siebold Museum afforded. In front of Augustus Kahn's store, spectators stood 3 rows deep, smoking their pipes from morning till night, and the good people of Munich, their eyes bulging out of their heads, asked each other with many an astounded "Mein Gott!" to what use this singular little machine might be put. Illustrated journals printed pictures of it. Its photograph was in every window, and in its honor did the illustrious Dr. Professor Otto von Schwanthaler compose his famous Paradox upon Clocks, a philosophico-humoristic study of 600 pages, which treats of the influence of clocks upon the character of various nationalities, and logically demonstrates that a nation so senseless as to regulate the employment of its time by such erratic chronometers as that clock of Bougival could no more expect to escape every sort of catastrophe than a ship which should put to sea with its compass gone astray. The phrase is a trifle long, but I have translated it literally. Once engaged upon an investigation, the Germans do not trifle with it, and before writing his paradox, the illustrious Dr. Professor was anxious to have the subject of his researches under his eyes, that he might study it thoroughly and analyze it to the minutest details with the zeal of an entomologist, and so he purchased the clock. And that explains how it passed from Augustus Kahn's store into the salon of the illustrious Dr. Professor Otto von Schwanthaler, custodian of the Pinakothek and member of the Academy of Sciences and Fine Arts, and was installed in his private residence 24 Ludwigstrasse. The Schwanthaler Salon. That which one was sure to observe first of all in entering the Schwanthaler Salon, solemn and academic as a conference hall, was a tall marble clock, severely classic in detail, but having a bronze polymnia and extremely complicated machinery. Its large face encircled a number of smaller ones. The hours, the minutes, and the seasons were represented. The equinoxes and even the phases of the moon could be seen in a bright blue cloud on the base of this timepiece in the center. The sound of this mighty machine filled the whole house. Even at the foot of the stairs, its pendulum could be heard swinging ponderously to and fro, with solemn emphasis, seeming to measure and divide life itself into fragments of equal length. Through that sonorous tick-tock throbbed the vibrations of the hand which marked the seconds as it went round and round its face with the feverish energy of a spider fully aware of the value of time. Then the hour would strike sadly and slowly as a college clock, and its striking always announced some event in the Schwanthaler household. At that precise moment Herr von Schwanthaler set out for the Pinakothek, loaded with papers, or his honoured lady had just returned from a sermon with her daughters, 3 lank, much befrilled girls, who looked like hop poles. Sometimes the clock announced that it was time for the dancing lesson, the zither lesson, or for gymnastics. Prompt on the hour, the piano was opened, the embroidery frame brought forth, or music stands were rolled into the salon, and ensemble music began. And every act of this household was so methodical, orderly, and well regulated that the spectator who observed all these Schwanthalers set in motion on the exact stroke of the clock, coming in or going out through the open folding doors, might have fancied he saw before him that procession of the apostles in the clock of Strasbourg, might have expected that upon the last stroke the entire Schwanthaler family would re-enter and disappear forever in their clock. Singular influence of the Bougival clock upon an honest family of Munich. Now it was beside that monument they placed the clock from Bougival, and you can easily imagine the effect that saucy bit of fragile finery produced. One evening, as the Schwanthaler ladies were busied with their embroidery in the large salon, and the illustrious Dr. Professor was reading to some of his colleagues of the Academy of Sciences the first pages of the Paradox, pausing from time to lift the little clock and to make, as it were, a blackboard demonstration concerning it, suddenly Eva von Schwanthaler, impelled by I know not what accursed curiosity, said to her father, blushing slightly, "Oh, papa, make it ring." The doctor detached the key, turned it twice, and a crystalline sound was heard so silvery, clear, and bright, that a sudden quiver of gaiety passed through that solemn assemblage. All eyes sparkled. "Isn't it pretty? Isn't it pretty?" exclaimed the young ladies, tossing their braids with such a lively little air that one could scarcely recognize them. Then Herr von Schwanthaler observed triumphantly, "Look at that crazy little French clock. It has just struck 8, and the hour hand is at 3." Everyone laughed at this, and notwithstanding the lateness of the hour, the gentlemen plunged into philosophical theories and interminable reflections upon the frivolity of the French people. Everyone forgot that it was time to go home, deaf even to Polymnia's dial, announcing ominously that it was 10 o'clock, the hour which ordinarily dispersed the assembled guests. The great clock could not understand what it all meant. Never before had it seen such hilarity in the Schwanthaler residence. Never had it seen people lingering so late in the salon. And shocking to relate, when the Mrs. Schwanthaler had retired to their room, they had sat up so late and laughed so much that they felt a hollow, empty sensation in the stomach, as if they were really hungry. And the sentimental Minna herself, with arms outstretched, exclaimed, "Ah! I believe I could eat a lobster claw." Let us be gay, children, let us be gay. Once it was wound up, the Bougival clock fell into its old irregular life, its habits of dissipation. They had begun by laughing at its crotchets, but by degrees growing accustomed to that charming chime, which sounded according to caprice and never told the right time, the serious Schwanthaler family lost all regard for time, and spent their days with delightful unconcern. They thought now of nothing but amusement. Human life seemed so short, since they no longer kept run of the hours. Everything was turned upside down. No more sermons, no more studies. They felt the need of excitement, of stir. Mendelssohn and Schumann had grown too monotonous, and were replaced with La Grande Duchesse and Les Petits Faust. And the Fraulein strummed and danced, while even the illustrious Dr. Professor, seized with a sort of vertigo, was able only to say, "Let us be gay, children, let us be gay." As for the big clock, it was a thing of the past. The young ladies had stopped the pendulum, pretending that it kept them from sleeping, and the household was run according to the caprice of that timepiece which struck 1 hour when it marked another. And then appeared the famous paradox upon clocks. On this occasion the Schwanthalers gave a great soirée, not one of those academic evenings such as they once enjoyed, quiet and not too brilliant, but a magnificent masquerade ball, at which Frau von Schwanthaler and her 3 daughters appeared as canotières of Bougival, bare-armed and in short skirts and tiny hats with gaudy ribbons. All this was soon the talk of the town, but it was merely the beginning. Tableaux vivants, late suppers, and baccarat scandalized Munich, witnessed one thing after another that winter in the academician's salon. "Let us be gay, children, let us be gay," repeated the poor man, utterly distracted, and indeed they were all extremely gay. Frau von Schwanthaler, become fashionable since her success as a canotière, passed her days upon the Isar wearing extravagant costumes. Her daughters, left at home, took French lessons of some hussar officers imprisoned in the city, and the little clock, having every reason for believing itself still at Bougival, continued to ring at random, always striking 8 when the hand stood at 3. At last, one morning, this mad whirl of folly carried off the entire Schwanthaler family to America, and the finest Titians of the Pinakothek followed their illustrious custodian in his flight. Conclusion. After the departure of the Schwanthalers, a perfect epidemic of scandals broke out in Munich. First, a canoness eloped with a baritone. The dean of the institute wedded a ballet dancer. An Aulic councillor was caught cheating at cards, and the convent established for noble women was closed because of a nocturnal disturbance. O depravity of inanimate things! It would seem that this little clock had some magic power, and that it had resolved to bewitch all Bavaria. Wherever it went, wherever that giddy but charming little chime sounded, it distracted people, turned their heads. At last, passing from one place to another, it took up its abode in the royal residence. And since that day, do you know the name of that score which lies always open upon the piano of King Louis, the rabid Wagnerian? Die Meistersanger. No, Le Folk à Ventre Blanc. Just the thing to teach them how to use our clocks. End of section 8.